You only get one first impression. That's something a lot of people say, including myself, but that's not really true, is it? Because we've all picked up a game at one point that we thought was boring, repetitive, tedious, to later pick it up in a different headspace, different part of our lives, and be like, hey, this is great, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Sometimes a game is too hard one year, and the next year you're craving the difficulty. One year, the idea of playing open world games sounds like barf, and the next year you pick up Breath of the Wild and can't put it down. You never know where your life and emotions are going to take you, but there is one thing you can count on, that even though that first impression isn't concrete, it still matters a hell of a lot. A first impression can be why you don't go see a movie in theaters, why you don't order something off of a menu, why you just don't walk into certain businesses in your town. The way the front of the building looks matters. The cover of the book matters. You can't pretend it doesn't. And when it comes to video games, it's the first 1 to 3 levels, it's the first boss fight, it's the way your character looks, it's the graphics, it's the sound, it's the controls, it's the performance on your machine. That is a massive difference. Video games are optional, and if you don't believe me, Google up Food and Shelter, and I guarantee you you're not going to see a picture of Army Men Sarge's Heroes 2 for the PlayStation 2. Yeah, this ain't stopping rainwater. Honestly, a smartphone is way more of a necessity nowadays than a video game ever will be. So, it's up to us to choose what we want to spend our time in. And if you've been coming home and playing video games every day since middle school, you likely have an opinion as to how you want to spend your time. At least I know that's true for me. Except maybe the middle school part. God, I wish I knew how to read. You've probably noticed I've put out a lot of first impressions videos lately. Sandstorm's console port, Far Cry 6, the 2042 beta, the Vanguard beta, and the Halo Infinite tech tests. Today I was going to release a Back 4 Blood first impressions video, but I thought it'd be kind of boring, much like how I found the game. Instead, I thought it'd be more fun to talk about how I form my first impressions so you guys can see if you relate to me. I don't always succeed at this, but I do try to make my videos more than just here's my opinion. I do like to break down why or what is truly disappointing or pleasing me with a product. Sometimes a game is just too vaguely terrible and all I can do is say it's really bad, but I like to say it's really bad, here's why. So when I load up a video game, I am looking for 2 things: wow factor and potential. The video game industry is a very highly competitive market, and while there are fans of literally every video game out there, good or bad, long or short, big or small, doesn't matter, there's a fan of a game if you can name it. I think because of the highly competitive nature of the industry, I put each game I play under a bit more scrutiny than maybe the average person does. So let's first talk about wow factor. Wow factor is the most vague of the 2 things that I look for, and, in my opinion, the most important. 2 main factors for the wow factor I'm looking for is that it can't require a ton of skill and practice, and it has to happen within the first 10 hours I'm playing the game. So other than those 2 criterias, it's super vague and can take on many forms. Wow factor could be graphical presentation, detail and authenticity, a banging soundtrack, really tight controls, a really interesting premise for a story, or just a really good opening to maybe even a more mundane story. Persona 5 takes so much time to get rolling, but within the first 10 hours, I'm treated to great music, an interesting visual style, and a plot that I am interested to see the end of from the very beginning. Breath of the Wild is also a little tedious and is, in my opinion, a little too bloated, but the opening wow factor, the art style, the music, the drama, and how quickly you're thrown into learning a bunch of systemic game mechanics really makes the game captivating quickly. But you think, yeah, Persona 5, Breath of the Wild, those are pretty critically acclaimed games. Yes, but this can happen with any single video game. Call of Duty every year blows me away with really tight feeling controls. It's crazy how scientifically designed Call of Duty seems to be for controller. They just all feel so snappy and intuitive, and even the older ones, which are, noticeably clunkier, they're still way smoother than any other console shooter that was out at the time, except maybe Halo, but I will still say Call of Duty has much more fluid and smooth movement compared to Halo. But Halo has its own wow factor. When you load it up, the art style, the music, it just makes you feel like you're taking part in something bigger than it is, and it sells that through its presentation. When I loaded into the Battlefield 2042 beta, my initial impressions were really good. Visually on next gen, Battlefield 2042 is breathtaking in a lot of ways. And I do look forward to seeing how a more polished version of this game is going to look and feel a couple months down the line. Looking at the Modern Warfare 2019 trailer here, it's so much more atmospheric than anything Black Ops 4 did. It just has such a great atmosphere, tension, realism, grit. Yeah, Modern Warfare ended up being a Call of Duty game, a really twitch shootery, very far from milsim Call of Duty game, but the graphical fidelity, the atmosphere, the lighting, the detail, the grit, it just felt so nice. It was such a refreshing thing after the last couple of Call of Duty games felt anything but that. Visually, presentation-wise, Call of Duty raised the bar on itself, and I really appreciate it for that. I will always appreciate Modern Warfare 2019 for that. And the fact that it kept to that tactical, believable, grounded military vibe throughout most of its live service life cycle in this day and age as a Call of Duty game is kind of impressive. Those first impressions matter. Tone, setting, the way the main character looks, they are all going to affect your purchase or your playtime. Like Final Fantasy 15 to me felt pretty good at first, but what really sold me on it was the actual story and what was actually happening to our main protagonist. And oh my god, I am so glad I kept with this game for that, because that made any mediocre aspect of the game 110% worth it for me personally. When you load up a game and you hear music that gives you chills, you see an art style that meshes with you, you see a protagonist that you can relate to, or you just at least love the aesthetic of, that's likely going to be a game you play all the way through and recommend to all of your friends. But this, of course, doesn't always happen. Oh my god. Let me tell you a story about how my friend Jake bought my friend a copy of Dark Souls 3, my friend played almost up to the first boss, and then gave up entirely. Turns out that's actually a really short story. But you have to understand, my friend Kyle had just got done playing Ghost of Tsushima, a game with astounding visuals, music, combat. It's just an amazing game. You should try it if you haven't. So when my friend went from the amazing, intuitive, fluid combat of Tsushima into the way more timing-based, rigid combat of Dark Souls, yeah, it was jarring to say the least. Going from a beautiful game that looks like this to a game that looks like this is kind of a hard sell as well. I've always thought of Dark Souls as nobody's fantasy. Yeah, everybody's kind of wanted to be Link at one point, everybody's kind of wanted to go to Skyrim at one point, but Dark Souls is so dark and dire and depressing, and while there are beacons of light in the stories, it's dark and depressing, and you can't convince me otherwise. Going from a beautiful, breathtaking, intuitive, story-driven epic to a very unforgiving, true-to-form, rigid RPG is something that's hard to do. And if you load up the game and you don't like the way any of the characters look, you don't like the character customizer, you don't like the graphical style, the artistic style, you don't like the way it feels to swing a sword or block with a shield, it just doesn't mesh with you on multiple levels, then who's going to blame you for not being interested? The problem Kyle had is that he was looking for the initial wow factor, and in my opinion, it doesn't really exist in the opening gameplay of Dark Souls 3 unless you are an established Souls fan. But there are two elements to forming your initial impression. The initial wow factor, graphics, art, music, story, characters, all of that I talked about earlier, the presentation, but then there's also the potential. With Dark Souls 3, I'm able to get past all of the surface level elements I'm not a big fan of for the fun with friends aspect. Dark Souls 3 to me is a mediocre, boring story RPG, but an absolutely amazing co-op adventure with friends. Yeah, I'm still out of credibility juice. How could you tell? You have to look for wow factor, that's for sure. You have to find the things that mesh with your personal preference, but you also have to be willing to look into the future a little bit. Look into the potential of where things could get better, or sometimes worse. Oh, that's right, this video was going to be about Back 4 Blood. Back 4 Blood is a game where the initial impression has just already tainted the game for me. The writing in the opening cutscene is fucking boring and lazy, and just everything visually I've seen a million times, so it didn't get creative. Okay, fair enough, it's a zombie shoot 'em up co-op game, so it doesn't need to be creative, I guess, but didn't care for the music, don't care for the characters, don't care for the writing.
God, I love Mondays.
No shit.
Graphically, the game does not blow me away. Animation-wise, the game doesn't blow me away. And atmosphere, tone, horror element, it's not there. I like the tone and feel of Left 4 Dead. I like the tone and feel of Killing Floor because I just feel like those games have really well-established, polished atmospheres, whereas this doesn't. I actually really want to try Zombie Army 4 and World War Z to see how they compare visually on that aesthetic, atmospheric angle. When it came to Black Ops Cold War Zombies, I had a ton of fun with it over the year. But it didn't capture what I loved about COD Zombies growing up. Noct, Kino, Transit, Mob of the Dead, I loved those maps because they had horror elements, they had great atmosphere, they just felt eerie and creepy, and when I go back to them, I get that creepy, eerie, sort of nostalgic feeling from it, and it just makes me sad. Cold War Zombies is a great PvE survival mode, but it doesn't give me COD Zombies vibes. It feels like an amalgamation of other things attempting to appeal to people that never liked previous Zombies modes. So, while it's really fun, it doesn't exactly pass the vibe check. I'm not into the meta of zombies or the lore of zombies, I always liked the feel of it, and when that feel got taken away, at least it was replaced by really fun gameplay mechanics, but there's still a hole in my heart from it. That might also be because of the smoking. Back 4 Blood might be a really fun co-op game. That's me looking into the potential of Back 4 Blood, but actually sitting down and playing it just by myself, I don't have any fun. There's nothing about this that blows me away. Shoot the big monsters with the big glowy weak spots, and that's about it. That's the only mechanic in the game other than don't scare birds, it calls in a horde, and I just didn't end up caring. I didn't get good music, I didn't get good writing, I didn't get good atmosphere, I didn't get something to make me go, wow, you know, that's a pretty cool little feature this game has. Nothing stood out to me as entertaining. So while, yeah, it could be fun with friends, so is a trip to the dentist. I think I have a cavity, so I'm gonna hit up the group chat. If I sit down at a game by myself and nothing about the initial presentation captures me, so there's no wow factor, and I have to look into the future and think of the potential the game has if I'm playing with friends, the game has already failed, in my opinion, on a fundamental level at getting me to be a fan. Well, that's all of my opinions on first impressions. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. In the meantime, I have some reading to do. There aren't any pictures!